The night was cold and the streets were empty. A soft wind blew between broken walls and ruined lamps. The city had once been alive. But now it was only a skeleton, silent, dark, and dangerous. Two sisters walked slowly. Their feet were bare, and their clothes were torn. The older sister held the younger one's hand tightly, guiding her through the shadows. The younger girl stumbled, her legs weak and her eyes filled with fear. She whispered, "Sister, I am so hungry." The older sister pulled her close, wrapping her thin arms around her. Her own stomach ached, but she forced a small smile. "Don't worry, we will find something," she said, though her voice shook. She looked down the empty street, but there was nothing. No food, no shelter, only silence. The sisters were not like the humans who once lived in this city. Their skin glowed faintly with blue patterns, marks of their alien bloodline. Once, those patterns were seen as beautiful. But now they were a curse. People hunted them, soldiers chased them, and anyone who saw them turned away in fear. The younger sister shivered. Her body was thin and fragile. Her small hands trembled as she clung to her sister's arm. "Do you think we will die here?" she asked. Her voice was soft, almost broken. The older sister froze. She wanted to answer with hope, but no hope was left inside her. Only emptiness and pain. She held her sister tighter. "I will not let you die," she whispered. "Not while I can still walk." Their steps echoed against the ruined walls. The moonlight fell on the cracked ground. The city was like a graveyard, every corner filled with shadows. Rats moved in the distance, and broken glass shined like cold stars on the road. The sisters walked until their legs shook. Finally, they sat down near an abandoned shop. The door was broken, the shelves empty. They sat close together, trying to keep warm. The older sister rubbed her sister's arms, trying to stop the shivering. Tears rolled down the younger one's cheeks. "I want mother," she said softly. "I want father." Her words pierced the older sister's heart like knives. She too wanted them back. But their parents were gone, taken by the soldiers who burned their village. The older sister looked at the sky. The stars seemed cold and far away. She prayed silently, even though she no longer believed anyone was listening. She prayed that someone, anyone, would help them before it was too late. Suddenly, there was a sound. Footsteps, slow but steady. Echoing down the empty street, the sisters froze. Fear filled their hearts. Who could it be? A soldier, a stranger, a hunter? The older sister quickly pulled the younger one into the shadows of the broken shop. She placed a hand over her mouth to stop her from crying out. The footsteps grew louder, each one like a drumbeat in their ears. A faint light appeared at the far end of the street. A lantern swinging gently. The glow cut through the darkness, revealing the shape of a man, a human. The sisters' hearts raced. Humans had never been kind to them. Humans shouted, threw stones, and turned them away. Some hunted their kind for profit. The older sister's body tensed, ready to run, but she was weak and her sister weaker. The man walked closer, his steps calm, his shoulders strong, his face hidden by the shadows of the lantern's glow. The older sister whispered, "Stay quiet." Holding her sister tight, the younger one buried her face against her sister's chest, her small voice shaking. "Will he hurt us?" The older sister's eyes stayed on the man. He was closer now. His boots splashed softly in the puddles left by the rain. The lantern light flickered, casting long shadows across the ruined walls. The man stopped. His head turned slightly, as if he could feel their presence. The sisters held their breath, their bodies pressed tightly against the wall. Silence filled the street, only the sound of the lantern flame moving in the wind. The man whispered something. His voice was low, almost soft. The sisters could not hear the words, but they felt something strange. It was not anger, not hate. It was gentle. The older sister's heart pounded. She did not know if she should stay hidden or step out. The fear of death fought against the desperate hope for help. The man moved again, slowly, step by step, coming closer to the broken shop. The lantern light grew brighter. falling across the sisters' trembling bodies in the shadows. The younger sister looked up, her eyes wide. "He found us," she whispered. Her voice cracked with fear. The older sister held her tighter. Her heart screamed inside her chest. She had to decide, hide and maybe starve, or step out and risk everything. The footsteps stopped right in front of them. The lantern's glow lit their faces at last, and the empty street was no longer silent. It was waiting for something to happen. The lantern light shook gently in the night air. The man stood still in the middle of the broken street. His shadow stretched across the cracked walls. His eyes searched the darkness, and the sisters pressed themselves tighter into the corner, afraid. He would see them, the older sister whispered to the younger. "Do not move. Do not make a sound." Her heart beat so fast she could hardly breathe. The younger girl clutched her arm, her eyes wide and wet with tears. The man took a slow step forward, then another. The sound of his boots against the wet ground echoed like thunder in the sisters' ears. He stopped again, lifting the lantern higher. The golden light spread across the ruins, and it almost touched the sisters' hiding place. For a moment, the older sister thought he would pass by. He looked tired, his clothes rough and torn, his beard was unshaved, his face weathered. He did not look like a soldier, but she knew better than to trust appearances. Many humans wore soft faces but carried sharp knives. The man spoke. His voice was low, gentle and heavy with sadness. "I know someone is there," he said slowly. "I am not here to hurt you." His words floated in the air, and the sisters froze. They did not believe him. The younger sister whispered, her voice shaking, "Maybe he is lying." The older one nodded slightly. Yes, he could be a trap. Still, something inside her hesitated. His voice was not filled with anger or cruelty. It carried warmth, something she had not heard in a long time. The man placed the lantern carefully on the ground. Then slowly he reached into a small bag tied to his belt. He pulled out something wrapped in cloth. He bent down, unwrapped it, and placed a small loaf of bread on the ground in front of him. The smell drifted through the cold air, warm and soft. The sisters' stomachs twisted painfully. They had not eaten for days. The younger girl's eyes locked on the bread, her body trembling with hunger. The older one held her back firmly, shaking her head. "No," she whispered. "It could be poisoned." The man stepped back, raising his hands. "I will leave it here," he said. "You can take it when I go." His eyes searched the shadows. No one should starve like this. The sisters stared at him. Their hearts battled between fear and desperation. Hunger pulled them forward, fear held them back. The younger one whispered, "Please, sister, just a little." Her small hands shook against her chest. The older sister's eyes filled with pain. She could not watch her sibling suffer. She slowly loosened her grip, but still kept her arm around the child. "Wait," she whispered. "We must see if he is true." The man did not move closer. He simply sat down on a broken stone and waited. His eyes lowered, his face tired. The lantern glowed beside him, casting gentle light across the empty street. Minutes passed. The cold bit at their skin. The bread smell pulled at their empty stomachs. Finally, the younger sister could not resist. She slipped from her sister's arms and ran forward, her tiny feet tapping against the stones. The older sister gasped, reaching out to stop her, but it was too late. The younger girl snatched the bread with shaking hands, tearing it into pieces. She ate as if she had forgotten fear. Crumbs falling from her lips, tears rolling down her cheeks. The older sister hurried forward, grabbing her sister by the arm. Her eyes darted to the man, ready for him to attack. But he did nothing. He only watched quietly. His hands stayed open, no weapons, no anger. "You are safe," he said softly. "Eat, both of you." The older sister's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to trust, but trust had killed so many before. Still, she could not deny the truth. The bread was real, warm, and clean, not poisoned. Her sister was alive after eating it. Slowly, carefully, she broke off a piece of bread and placed it in her own mouth, her eyes never leaving the man. The taste filled her mouth, and tears burned her eyes. She had forgotten what it felt like to eat. The man's voice lowered. I have more food and water too. He paused, his face shadowed by the lantern's glow. But I will not force you. The older sister pulled her sibling close again. She whispered in her ear. Do not trust too quickly. The younger girl nodded, but her eyes still looked at the man with a spark of hope. The man stood slowly, picking up the lantern. He did not walk closer. Instead, he turned his back and began to walk away, leaving the breadcrumbs scattered. On the ground, if you wish, follow, he said, his voice echoing softly. If not, I will not return. The sisters stood frozen, their hearts caught between terror and longing. The younger sister whispered, He is kind. I feel it. The older one's eyes filled with storm. She had to decide, stay in the cold and die, or risk following a stranger in the dark. The lantern light moved further down the street, fading slowly. The younger girl tugged at her sister's arm. Please, let us go, she begged. Her voice broke, full of desperation. The older sister looked at the empty street behind them, then at the man's fading light ahead. Her heart trembled. Suspense held the air heavy around them. At last, she whispered, We will see if he is true, and stepped forward into the darkness. The sisters walked carefully behind the man. Their bare feet touched the broken stones of the empty street. The lantern swung in his hand, glowing softly. The light was the only guide in the cold night. The older sister kept her arm around the younger. Her eyes never left the stranger. Every movement he made she studied, ready to grab her sister and run if danger appeared. The younger one leaned forward with weak steps, her face filled with hope. She clutched the last crumbs of bread in her palm, afraid to let go. They left the ruined city behind. The buildings fell away and the path led toward a forest. The trees stood tall and dark, their branches shaking in the wind. The man pushed aside the bushes, leading them deeper. The older sister whispered, Stay close to me. The younger nodded, but her eyes followed the lantern, drawn to its glow. After a long walk, they reached a small wooden cabin, half hidden under vines and broken trees. Smoke curled faintly from its chimney. The man stopped at the door, turning toward the sisters. His voice was calm. You can enter if you wish. There is warmth inside. The older sister hesitated. She pulled the younger behind her, whispering, It could be a trap. But the younger shook her head. Please, I smell food. The man pushed open the door. A soft glow of fire lit the inside. The air smelled of boiling soup, rich and warm. The cabin was simple, with wooden walls and a stone hearth. On the table sat a pot, steam rising from it. The sisters' bodies trembled. Their eyes locked on the pot, their mouths filled with water. The older one swallowed hard, whispering, It looks real. The man placed the lantern on the table and stirred the soup. The smell spread through the room, filling the air with life. He poured the thick broth into 2 wooden bowls. Slowly, he set them on the floor near the sisters. He did not push them, he only said, Eat, it is yours. The younger sister rushed forward, her small hands gripping the bowl. She sipped, then drank. The warmth spread through her thin body. She cried as she swallowed. It is hot. It is good, she whispered. The tears made her voice shake. The older one stayed back, her eyes locked on the man. She moved slowly, knelt by the second bowl, and touched the liquid. It was real, warm. Her lips parted. She drank carefully. The taste was deep, salty, full of life. Her chest shook. She could not remember the last time she had eaten food like this. The man sat on a chair, not eating, only watching. His eyes were soft, his hands rested on his knees. He did not move, he let them eat. The older sister finally asked, her voice sharp with suspicion, Why are you doing this? Why give us food? The man lowered his gaze, his voice was quiet. Because no one deserves to starve, because I lost my family once and I will not watch others lose theirs. His words carried a weight, something honest. The sisters looked at each other. For the first time there was no fear in the younger's eyes, only relief. She whispered, Sister, he is not like the others. The older one clenched her fists. Her heart wanted to believe, but her mind refused. Trust was dangerous, she shook her head. We cannot stay, we should go after we eat. But then a sound came. A howl of wind outside, followed by a distant thud. The younger sister gasped. The soldiers? Her body trembled. The man stood and walked to the window. His eyes searched the forest. Not soldiers, only the night, he said. Then he closed the wooden shutter, locking it tight. You are safe here, at least for tonight. The sisters finished the soup, their bodies warmer now. The younger one lay against her sister's lap, her eyes closing. She whispered softly, I feel safe, sister, just for a little. The older one stroked her hair, staring at the fire. Her heart still doubted, but the warmth inside her body told another story. The man placed a blanket near them, stepping back again. He whispered, Sleep. Tomorrow we will talk. The older sister looked at him, then at the fire. The shadows danced on the cabin walls. She did not answer, but her silence was less sharp now. For the first time in many nights, the sisters lay down on something soft, covered with a blanket. The younger drifted into sleep quickly, her small hands clutching her sister's sleeve. The older one stayed awake, her eyes heavy, watching the man in the firelight. The man sat quietly by the flames, his face calm, his eyes far away. He looked like someone carrying a heavy story. The older sister studied him. Her fear was still alive, but deep inside, something small, something fragile began to grow. It was not trust yet, but it was close. Morning light slipped through the cracks of the wooden cabin. The fire had burned low, leaving only red embers glowing faintly. The older sister opened her eyes first. Her body was stiff from sleeping on the floor, but warmer than it had been in many nights. The younger sister still slept beside her, curled up under the blanket, her chest rising and falling softly. The man was already awake. He sat near the hearth, sharpening a small knife. The sound of stone against metal echoed in the cabin. The older sister tensed, her body froze. Her eyes followed every movement. He noticed her stare and lowered the blade, placing it aside. His voice was calm. It is only for cutting wood, not for you. The older sister did not answer, but her grip tightened on the younger one's shoulder. The man rose, walking to the table. He set out 3 wooden cups and filled them with water from a clay jug. Drink, he said quietly. It is clean. The younger sister stirred awake. Blinking against the morning light, she rubbed her eyes, then smiled weakly. It is warm here, she whispered. Her small fingers reached for the cup of water. She drank greedily, water dripping down her chin. The older sister hesitated before touching her own cup, but the taste was fresh, pure. She could not remember when she last drank clean water. Her throat loosened, and her body felt lighter. The man pulled bread from a cloth bundle, setting it. On the table, he also placed dried fruit beside it. The younger girl gasped softly. More food? She looked at him with wide eyes. He nodded once. Eat. You need strength. The sisters sat at the table. Their hands shook as they ate slowly, piece by piece. The younger sister giggled softly for the first time in weeks. Her cheeks colored faintly as the food warmed her body. The older one still watched the man carefully. Why do you help us? She asked again, her voice sharp. No human ever helped us before. The man's eyes lowered. His voice was heavy. I once had a daughter. She died because no one helped her. He looked at them with tired eyes. I cannot change the past, but I can choose what I do now. The words struck the sisters like a quiet storm. The younger girl whispered to her sister. He lost his family too. The older sister's chest tightened. She did not want to feel pity for him, but his voice was too real to ignore. After they ate, the man showed them the cabin. The walls were patched with wood, the windows small and covered. Outside, he stacked logs neatly. A bucket of rainwater stood near the door. It was simple, but safe. The forest surrounded it, like a shield. The younger sister ran her fingers along the wooden wall, whispering, It feels like a home. She turned, smiling for the first time. The older sister pulled her back gently. "Do not trust too quickly," she warned. The man worked silently, chopping wood near the cabin. The sound of the axe hitting the log echoed through the trees. The sisters watched him from the doorway. He looked strong but not cruel, his movements steady. Later he returned with a small bundle of carved sticks. He handed one to the younger sister. "A toy," he said softly. It was shaped like a small bird, its wings spread. The girl's eyes widened. "For me?" She held it tightly, smiling. The older sister stared at him, suspicion fading just a little. She whispered, "Why give her this?" He shrugged. "Because she is a child. Children should smile." As the day passed, the sisters began to breathe easier. The younger laughed as she played with the toy bird. Running around the cabin, her glowing blue markings shimmered faintly in the sunlight. The man smiled faintly at the sight, but said nothing. Still, danger was never far. In the distance, the rumble of engines echoed once. The man stiffened. Grabbing his axe, he looked toward the forest edge. "Soldiers pass sometimes," he said firmly. "If they see you, they will not spare you." The sisters froze, fear rushing back into their veins. The older one pulled the younger close. "We should not stay," she whispered quickly. The man shook his head. "Leaving now will kill you faster. Stay hidden, trust me." His words carried weight, and for the first time the older sister did not fight them. She lowered her eyes, her voice soft. "For now." That night the cabin glowed with firelight. The sisters sat close together, wrapped in blankets, their stomachs no longer empty, their hands no longer cold. The younger leaned against her sister's shoulder, whispering, "It feels safe here." The man sat nearby, staring into the flames. His face was calm but shadowed with memories. He whispered almost to himself, "A home should be a place where no one fears the night." The sisters heard him, and their hearts stirred. For the first time since their parents died, the darkness outside did not feel endless. The fire warmed not only their bodies, but something inside their hearts. It was the beginning of kindness, fragile and new, like a seed in winter soil. The forest was quiet that night. Only the sound of owls echoed between the trees. Inside the cabin, the fire burned softly, casting warm light across the walls. The sisters sat close together, their bodies wrapped in blankets, but their eyes were heavy with thoughts. The man sat across from them, silent. His face was calm, but his eyes were distant, as if trapped in memories. The younger sister hugged her wooden toy bird, whispering softly to it. The older one finally broke the silence. Her voice was sharp, but trembling. "We cannot stay here forever. They will find us." The man looked at her. His voice was steady. "I know." He leaned forward. "That is why you must learn to hide better, to survive." The younger sister frowned. "We are tired of hiding." Her voice cracked. "We only wanted to live like others. Why did they hate us so much?" The man's jaw tightened. He stared into the flames. "Because they fear what they do not understand." His eyes shifted to the glowing patterns on their skin. "And because cruelty is easier than kindness," the older sister clenched her fists. Her eyes burned with tears. "They killed our parents. They burned our home." Her voice rose, echoing against the wooden walls. "And no one helped us. Not one." The cabin fell silent again. The man lowered his head, his voice barely above a whisper. "I know what that feels like." The sisters looked at him, confused. The younger one tilted her head. "You?" she asked softly. He nodded. His voice grew heavier. "Years ago, soldiers came to my village too. They took my wife and daughter when I was away. I returned to ashes. I searched for them, but they were gone." His hands clenched tightly. "I swore I would never forgive myself for being too late." The sisters' eyes widened. They had not expected his story. The older sister's voice softened despite herself. "You lost them, like we lost ours." The man nodded slowly. "Yes. That is why I cannot leave you to suffer. Not while I still breathe." The younger sister leaned into her sibling, whispering, He understands he is like us. But the older one shook her head quickly, trying to resist the feeling. Do not trust so fast, she hissed, though her voice carried less strength than before. Suddenly, a noise outside broke the moment. The low hum of engines, the crunch of metal wheels against soil. The sisters froze, their hearts racing. The man grabbed the lantern and blew it out. The cabin sank into darkness. Only the faint glow of embers remained. Stay quiet, he whispered sharply. He moved to the window, opening the wooden shutter just enough to look outside. Through the trees, faint lights glowed, patrol ships sliding slowly through the forest. Their beams scanned the ground, searching. A soldier's voice carried faintly in the distance, rough and commanding. The younger sister clung to the older, shaking violently. They found us, she breathed. The older one pressed her close, her own body trembling. Her mind screamed for escape, but there was nowhere to run. The man returned to them, his voice low and firm. They are only passing this time, but they are close, too close. He looked at the sisters. If they see your markings, they will kill you. The older sister's fear turned to anger. Her eyes burned in the darkness. We cannot live like this, always hunted, always afraid. Her voice broke. What is the point of surviving if there is no freedom? The man's voice was firm but gentle. You live because you have each other. That is enough for now. He placed a hand on the older sister's shoulder. Do not let hate consume you. If you give up, your sister will lose everything. The younger looked up at her sibling, her small eyes wide. Please don't leave me. I need you, she whispered. The older sister broke then. She hugged the child tightly, tears falling down her face. I will not leave you. Never. The patrol ship's sound faded slowly into the distance. The forest returned to silence, but the fear remained heavy in the air. The man lit the lantern again, his face tired. They are always searching, that is why you must stay hidden, but I will protect you as long as I can. The younger sister's eyes glistened. Why? You do not even know us. He looked at her with pain in his eyes. Because once, someone should have done the same for my child, but no one did. I will not repeat that sin. The fire crackled softly. The sisters sat close to him now, no longer on the other side of the room. The older one whispered, her voice breaking between trust and fear. If they find us, will you fight for us? The man's eyes hardened. Yes, he said firmly. I will fight for you, even if it costs me everything. The cabin fell into silence again, but this time it was not the silence of fear. It was the silence of a bond forming in the shadows of the past. The forest outside was still, but inside the cabin the air carried weight. The patrols had passed, yet the memory of their voices still echoed in the sisters' minds. The younger clung to her sister's arm as if letting go meant losing her forever. The older one sat rigid, her eyes sharp, her body trembling with the aftertaste of fear. The man placed more wood on the fire. The flames rose, chasing away the cold shadows. He turned toward them, his voice quiet. They will keep searching, but you are safe here for now, the younger sister whispered, her small voice cracking. Safe. She hugged her wooden bird tighter, as if it were proof. The older one looked at the man with narrowed eyes. For how long? She asked. Her voice was hard, but underneath it trembled something else, a quiet plea. The man sighed, his shoulders heavy. No safety lasts forever, he admitted. But sometimes a little safety is enough to find strength again. The sisters did not answer. The younger lay her head on her sibling's lap. The older stroked her hair gently, her eyes fixed on the fire. For a moment the room felt softer, as if the darkness outside could not reach them here. Over the next days, life inside the cabin began to change. The man taught the sisters small things. He showed them how to listen for danger in the wind, how to walk without leaving tracks, and how to hide markings under torn cloth. He gave the older sister a small knife, pressing it into her hand. Not to attack, he told her, but to protect. She held it tightly, her fingers shaking. No one had ever given her something with trust before. She whispered, "Why trust me?" He looked into her eyes. "Because I must. And because you must learn to trust yourself." The younger sister laughed again for the first time in months. She played outside the cabin under the man's watchful eye, chasing the light that slipped between the trees. She carved little shapes from sticks with the knife he gave her. Though clumsy, she smiled at her work. The sound of her laughter filled the air. It was fragile but real. At night, the man told them stories, not of soldiers, but of rivers, of mountains, of birds that flew free in the sky. The younger listened with wide eyes. Her glowing markings flickered softly like starlight as she leaned close to him. "Tell me more," she whispered each night. And he always did. The older sister stayed quieter, always suspicious, always watching, yet even she began to soften. One night she whispered to her sibling when the man had gone to fetch wood, "I almost forgot how your laugh sounded." Her eyes grew wet, and she brushed them quickly. "Do not lose it again." The younger hugged her tightly. "We won't lose it, not with him here." But shadows still lingered in their hearts. The soldiers were near, the danger constant. Sometimes at night, the roar of patrol engines echoed across the forest and fear rushed back into their veins. Each time the man would douse the fire and press a finger to his lips, they would hide in silence, listening as the world outside hunted them. One night, after such a moment, when the danger had passed, the man sat close to the sisters. His voice was steady but low. "If they find you, I will not run." His eyes were hard. "I will stand and fight." The older sister looked at him surprised. "Even if you die?" she asked. Her voice trembled, not with anger but with disbelief. "Even then," he said firmly, "because you should not face the world alone." The words struck her like a blade. She turned away quickly, not wanting him to see the tears that rose in her eyes. The younger sister leaned against his side, whispering, "Then we are not alone anymore." The man placed his hand gently on her head, whispering, "No, you belong here now, you belong with me." The fire glowed brighter, and for a brief moment the cabin felt like a family, not by blood, but by choice. The older sister lay down, beside her sibling, her eyes heavy. She watched the man sit by the fire, his face calm, his body strong against the shadows. For the first time in a long time, she whispered softly, almost to herself, "Maybe we do belong." The younger, already half asleep, smiled and murmured, "Yes, sister, we belong." But then, just as silence began to settle, a sound broke it, a heavy knock on the cabin door. The sisters jolted upright, their hearts slamming in their chests. The man froze, his hand tightening. Around the axe by the wall, another knock followed, louder this time. The younger whimpered, clinging to her sister. The older one whispered, "They found us," her voice shaking with dread. The man stood slowly, eyes hard. He motioned for silence. Then he stepped toward the door, the firelight flickering against his back. The sisters held each other tightly, fear flooding them once more. The cabin was no longer a shelter. It was a trap of wood and fire, waiting to be broken. The knock came again, slow and heavy, echoing through the night. The knocking echoed through the cabin like thunder. Each strike rattled the wooden walls. The sisters clung to each other, their small bodies shaking. The older sister whispered, "Do not move. Do not make a sound." Her eyes locked on the door as if her gaze alone could keep danger away. The man stood tall near the entrance, his hand resting on the axe leaning against the wall. His voice was firm but low. "Stay behind me." He moved slowly, each step heavy. The fire behind him threw long shadows that stretched across the floor. Another knock came, slower this time. Then a voice followed, hushed but urgent. "It is me." The man froze. His eyes narrowed. He stepped closer to the door. "Who are you?" he asked sharply. The voice whispered again. "A friend. Open quickly before they see." The sisters looked at each other, hearts pounding. Was this a trap? Or a chance at help? The older sister shook her head, whispering, "Do not trust." the younger whispered back. But the voice, "It is not cruel." The man unlocked the wooden latch. He pulled the door open just enough for the firelight to spill outside. A figure stepped in, an older villager, carrying a basket. His eyes darted nervously around before closing the door. Behind him, the sisters pressed tighter against each other. The villager set the basket on the table, whispering, "Food and cloth for them. The soldiers searched the woods tonight, but I told them I saw nothing." His eyes moved to the sisters, his voice softer. "Children should not starve." The older sister's suspicion did not fade. She glared at him, but her younger sibling whispered, "He is helping too." The man nodded, placing a hand on the villager's shoulder. "Thank you." The villager only stayed a moment, fear heavy in his steps. Before leaving, he whispered, "Be careful. They will return soon. Protect them." Then he slipped back into the dark forest, leaving the cabin quiet once more. The sisters exhaled together, their bodies trembling with release. The older one whispered, "I thought it was the end." The younger nodded, still clutching her toy bird. "But we are safe, at least tonight." The man turned to them, his voice steady. "You see, not all humans are cruel, some still choose kindness." His eyes softened. "But kindness is rare. That is why we must guard it." The sisters sat near the fire again. The man laid out the new food and cloth. The younger sister smiled as she touched the fabric, wrapping it around herself. "Warm," she whispered. Her markings glowed faintly under the firelight. The older sister watched in silence. Her heart was torn between fear of tomorrow and the warmth of now. She whispered finally, "Why do you keep saying we belong here?" "We are not like you." The man sat beside them. His voice was low but firm. "Because family is not always blood. Family is choice. You belong because I chose you, because no one else did." The words sank deep into their hearts. The younger sister leaned against him, whispering softly, "Then we are yours." Her eyes closed, her body finally resting without fear. The older one hesitated, her pride and suspicion heavy, but as she looked at her sister, asleep in safety, she whispered, through tears, "If she belongs with you, then so do I." The man placed a hand on her shoulder gently. "Then it is decided. From now on, you are not alone." The fire glowed brighter, chasing the shadows. For the first time in many months, the cabin was not just wood and stone. It was a home. Days turned to weeks. The sisters grew stronger. Their cheeks filled with color. Their laughter returned. The man taught them how to gather berries, how to build traps, and how to listen to the forest. At night, he told them more stories, and they began to share their own. But danger never truly left. Sometimes soldiers passed close, their voices echoing. Yet each time the man stood firm, ready to shield the sisters. Each time they survived together. One night, as the fire crackled softly, the younger sister whispered, "Brother, tell us again what you said the first night." Her eyes glowed like stars in the dim light. The man smiled faintly. His voice was steady. "I said, you belong with me." The older sister, sitting close beside them, finally whispered back, her voice steady and certain, "And we say, we do belong with you." The cabin was filled with silence, but it was no longer the silence of fear. It was the silence of peace, of family, of hearts that had found each other in the dark. In the end, the world outside was still cruel. Soldiers still hunted, hunger still lurked. But inside that small cabin, under the glow of firelight, two alien sisters were no longer homeless, and a broken man was no longer alone. Together, they were a family born not by blood but by choice. A family that whispered into the night, "We belong